us.
Good evening, my dear friends. I've been promising you a full-length Bob tutorial for Season 2 for quite a while, and we're finally gonna make it tonight. I'm very excited because I'm hoping it's gonna be all good and shit, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. If you're new to one of my how to play tutorials, these are the longest and most in-depth pieces of content that I make, and I tend to only make them for characters that I know quite a bit about and play a lot myself. Now, me and Bob have only been dating for about a month, but it's been a whirlwind romance, and I'm just about ready to pop the question. Just some quick housekeeping before I jump into the actual material. I will put time codes in the description so that you can go to any specific section you like, or alternatively you can just sit back, relax, and let me take you on a magical journey of man boobs and safe mids. Also in the description will be any corrections I might need to make. I will try to keep that to an absolute minimum, but when you talk as much as I tend to do in these videos, it's easy to make even obvious mistakes, so if I do need to make any corrections, I'll put them down there, so feel free to refer to the description if you hear anything that you think sounds funky. But with that, I want to start talking about the actual character, and before I give you any specific moves, I just want to give you a quick overview of what this character is all about, his playstyle and overall strategy. Now, Bob is characterized by a lot of unorthodoxy. He's probably the least basic character I've made one of these guides for so far. That's not to say I think he's a very advanced character, but I think he probably deserves to be referred to as at least intermediate, because he has a Mishima style crouch dash that is, you know, a somewhat advanced movement option depending on how you use it. But Bob is one of those characters who actually wants to use his crouch dash a lot. He has some important moves out of it, not least of all his Hell Sweep, which is very similar to something like what you would see from Kazuya, but a very important low from him. He also has a lot of unorthodoxy associated with him in terms of his frame data. Specifically, his launchers and counter-hit launchers are all much slower than what you would find on a typical character, and so these are all aspects of the character that you're going to have to learn how to work around. But if you watch this whole video through, that's something that I'm going to teach you all about how to do. I would recommend Bob to absolutely any comer. Even though he's a little bit intermediate, he can definitely be your first character when you're picking up this game. Just be aware that a lot of the skills you pick up when you play him might not translate as organically to other characters as they would if you were playing something like Miguel. But he's definitely fun for new players and advanced players alike. I think the fun factor of this character is actually quite huge. I like his move animations, the drama, and the just the fun factor, the sound effects of everything he does. He really is really enjoyable to play, so I would definitely recommend you pick him up if you've ever thought about it. The last thing I will say about the character before we start talking about the move list is that I think that Bob is actually a wall specialist. Out of all the characters that I've played a lot, I think he's the one who is the most powerful when interacting with the wall. He doesn't necessarily get giant damage in his standard wall combos, even though he can get really powerful stuff, but he's very good at specifically wall splatting, and even when he gets close range wall splats, he can do stuff like, you know, sidestep and get multiple combos on the wall like that and get some really cool damage. So I think his wall splat options are some of the best in the game. He has extreme range on some of them. Some of them are very safe, like his lariat, his sidestep lariat, and so on. I'm going to teach you all about how to use and combo with the wall in a later section, but for now I would just recommend that if you're playing this character in a competitive setting and you have the option of choosing your stage, always go for a wall stage when you're playing with Bob. It's not the case that you are at a disadvantage necessarily on a stage that has no walls, but because you're so good at specifically wall splitting, I would recommend the choice. And if you are playing a character that is very good in the open, for example a Mishima who will be very comfortable backdashing and looking for whiff punishes, you will be at a slight disadvantage because compared to them, your standard launchers and whiff punishers really are quite slow. So he's very good at working with the wall, but he can definitely function just fine even when he doesn't have access to it. And that's just a little bit of an introduction to the character overall. I think he's extremely fun, and I'm gonna try and develop him as one of my best characters going forward into this game. But I think I want to make a quick cut here, and then we're gonna start talking about the first few moves that I want to show you, and they are going to be his block punishers. So I will see you again in just a couple of seconds. Welcome back, everyone. In this section I want to talk to you about Bob's block punishment, and this is a section where the character really excels, at least for normal standing moves. He struggles a little bit for wild standing block punishment, as you will see in a bit, but let's start at the most logical point, which will be standing 10 frames. And for this you have a couple of very decent options. The most standard one that you will see most of the time is the 1-1-2. This is very decent for damage. As you can see, you get a pretty chunky 26, which is very good for 10 frames. But the properties of the move are not that impressive. Apart from the damage, you only get +2 on hit, which is not that big for a Punisher like this. And you're -12 if you should get this blocked, so you can eat a punish, but you only get +2 on hit, and you get some very decent damage. The next option I want to give you, which is a personal favorite of mine, is the 1-4. As you can see, this gives you slightly less at 22. But you're at a very nice +5 on hit, which is, in my opinion, quite a lot better. So this is your best option for damage, this is your best option for advantage, and which one you want to apply is really going to come down to preference. Maybe you will alternate depending on what you're trying to achieve, but I think most people who play Bob will find a favorite between these two and just set it and forget it most of the time. The 1-4 retains its counter hit launch properties on the 4 extension that you have on the normal standing 4 for Bob. That doesn't come into play when you're just using it for block punishment, but it can occasionally happen that you get a counter hit there in a scramble, which is pretty cool. You're at -6 on block, so this is completely safe on block as opposed to the 1-1-2. The final option I want to give you for 10 frames is another favorite of mine. It's the 2-1. 2-1, as you can see, is not that powerful in terms of damage. You only get 18, which is quite low, but the second hit of this string is a mid, and that can be very nice when you're playing like a little bit of a pussy, like I do a lot of the time, and you're not 100% confident that your punishment is going to come out in time or whatever. It's very nice to have a little safety hit right there that is going to beat a lot of your opponent's powerful retaliation options. So the 2-1 is decent, even though you don't get impressive damage. You get +4 on hit, which I think is pretty good, and you're at -4 on block, which is not that bad at all. Another reason I like to use 2-1 is if you use this for a Punisher, you are conditioning the opponent to only see these 2 hits, and that means that when you're using the string as a poke string, you can somehow sometimes incentivize them to swing after those 2 hits because they're at 4 frames of advantage, and then you tack on the 4 extension right there, knock them to the ground, and you can get a guaranteed back 3 on the ground for really good damage. That is sidewalkable to Bob's left, the opponent's right, by the way, so when you're playing against advanced players, be careful about throwing that string out too much. But I think you have 3 solid options for 3 different purposes here. The 1-1-2 for damage, the 1-4 for advantage, and the 2-1 when you want the safest option possible, but you do get slightly less damage and advantage. Moving up to 12 frames, you get really your best block Punisher with this character overall, which is the 4-2-3. This is very, very good for 12 frames. First thing to notice about the move is that the range is absolutely massive, meaning that this is going to work for even powerful pushback moves. It's going to work against stuff like Death Fist a lot of the time, not always. But for example, long range hop kicks like Claudio's hop kick, for example, are going to be comfortably reached by this for punishment. And so it's very, very good and very important as a Punisher that you have something this powerful and fast. I'm not going to recommend anything else because I don't think you should substitute the 4-2-3 with anything just because of how good it is. You get knockdowns, you get wall splats. It's just an amazing move overall, and probably your most sort of powerful block Punisher if you're relatively, what most characters in the cast have access to. Moving up to 14 next. I mean, you have stuff like this for 13, but we're going to talk about them more in other sections. I think for block punishment, we want to go directly to 14, where you're going to find your down 1+2 to 1, which is this move. It's a 14 frame move that knocks down for 35. It's a little bit of a unique and weird one. It's kind of difficult to apply, but it is 14 frames and it is natural, and you're going to get 35 damage, so it is more than what you get from the forward 2-3 right here. The sequence starts with 2 highs and then becomes 2 mids. Like I said, the input is down 1 plus 2 to 1. Slightly awkward input. There's another unique thing about this block punisher, which is if you do the input in a special way, you can get a free key charge after this hits, which is weird. Bob has this, and Leo has a couple of moves like that. It's kind of a Tekken 6 thing. The way I get it out, it's not listed in any move lists, but the easiest way to do it is just, instead of doing down 1 plus 2 to 1, you just do down 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2. So you do the whole sequence with 1 plus 2, and if you do that after the final hit connects, you're going to get a key charge. This is gimmicky and not necessarily something I recommend, but because Bob has some really powerful counter hits, maybe you can play around with it if you are the kind of guy who likes to party. But just be aware that you have that option. And I mean, in any case, pressing down 1 plus 2 3 times is just kind of easier than pressing down 1 plus 2 to 1. But that's 14. You also have down forward 1 2, which is little quick mid string right here. Quite punishable at minus 12, but you get a nice plus 4 on hit. This is kind of like his version of Crimson Dawn, but obviously nowhere near as good because you don't get the knockdown or wall splat properties. But it's a decent little chunky block punisher that you can use every once in a while. The down forward one by itself is a pretty good little mid. But I would say for the most part you can really stick with 4-2-3 here. But if you want the optimal option for 14, I think it's going to be this thing. Moving up next to 15, you're going to find that you do not actually have a 15 frame launcher with Bob. Neither do you have a 16 or a 17 frame launcher with Bob. Don't let that scare you off using the character, though. I'm going to explain all about how we get around that with the character in later sections. For 15, you have 2 options that I want to recommend personally. You have down 2-4, which is mid-mid. It's more damage than 4-2-3. It's a knockdown and wall splat move that's very reliable, so I like this. It also has decent range, so it is a better option than the 4-2-3 when you can get it instead. Knockdown minus 13 on block, by the way, so it is punishable. And then another option that you have that is actually new to Bob in Season 2, I don't think this used to be natural, is the back 4-4. This has more range than you would assume looking at Bob's tiny sausage legs, but it's actually very decent because it has a large instep in the first animation. You can see how Bob really walks forward during the first hit right there, meaning that you have decent range. Back 4-4 is 35 damage, and it causes that screw thing on your opponent, meaning that even though it doesn't knock down, it will give you wall splats, and it is initiated with a mid. So I think this is a very decent little punisher. And if I block something that is specifically minus 15, this is probably what I would personally use most of the time. I really like this. And you have another mid extension right here, which is the back to 1, and this is a mix-up option for when you're using this for pokes instead of punishing, but this is not natural, as you can see right here. So the only punishing option you have is the back 4-4, but it's a very good move. And as you can see, like 35 damage around this area is kind of where your damage peters out for minus 15, which means that sometimes when you're blocking launch punishable moves with this character, you will be unable to kill where you would normally be able to kill with other characters, which can be a little bit annoying. Doesn't come into play all that often, but it is something to keep in mind when you're playing this character. Next, moving up to 16, I like forward 4 back 3. Forward 4 is a high homing move with some decent range, and every time you hit with this, you're going to get guaranteed back 3s on the ground that your opponent can't escape. And this is consistent at weird angles, as you can see right here. It's basically pretty much never going to let you down. It's very, very reliable. The range is massive, and so I like this. But as you can see, the damage isn't necessarily more impressive than what you have for 14 or 15. It's just another very decent option. It is a high though. Also, for 16, you have a very important move with this character. In my opinion, by far the most important move with the character, which is his Headbutt. And we're going to talk about this. I'm going to do a specific section all about this move. But it impacts at 16, meaning that upward 1+2, 1+2 is a 40 damage block punisher. That is going to be optimal right here. Very good for damage. You can do the 4 extension instead for 35, but you do get some nice frame advantage, so it's better for setups. Both moves will wall splat comfortably, but this will deal the 1+2 will deal more damage and will wall splat at a further range. This is like I say, just an extremely important tool for you for block punishment, whiff punishment, and everything else. We're going to talk about all of that later. Just be aware that at -16, I think this is one of your best options, and so it's very good for killing blocked rage arts, for example. Because you don't want to block a rage art and then hit them with something like this and then they live. That's going to feel like you got cheated a lot of the time. Next, we're going to move up to your first real launcher, which you find at 18 frames to impact with this character, and it's down back 1+2. Weird animation, weird notation for your most standard launcher, and weird impact speed, of course. But this is a very good move. Apart from its impact speed, it's got great range, it's got serious crush properties, and it leads to some pretty funky combos, even though it launches the opponent head towards, which is a little bit weird. I'm going to teach you how to combo off of all of Bob's launchers later, but this is what you have for your fastest launcher from standing. It's unorthodox, but it's very good. And so making the most of your other options below 18, stuff like the 4-2-3, stuff like the upward 1+2, 1+2, stuff like the back 4-4, I think are important with this character. And you need to sort of know what your best option is and what you really want to use, because it's not like all of those characters that can just go to a 15 frame hop kick for anything that is 15 and above and know that they're going to get a very good, standard damage combo. The last standing block punisher I'm going to give you is the hop kick up for 3 at 20 frames, and so you're rarely going to block punish 20 frames, but when you do, I think the hop kick is a more powerful launcher than the down back 1+2. It does lead to a slightly higher damage combo, which is very good. But it is very slow for a hop kick again, so it's not going to come into play as a block punisher all that much. It's more for catching a ducking opponent and sometimes for whiff punishment. Okay, with that I think we're going to move over and talk about while standing block punishment. And as I mentioned, this is an area where Bob is not necessarily very impressive, because you get while standing 4 for 11, and this is a bog standard. As you can tell, you only get 16 damage and a +5 on hit, -6 on block, so this is just completely middle of the road, vanilla for a while standing 11, but it does retain all the great properties of a move like that. You can do it out of a crouch dash, just crouch dash 4, and it's going to be a nice little mid when you're using that to mix up, for example, hell sweeps, and it's basically the same move in those scenarios. But this is what you have for while standing 11, and then you don't really get anything until we move up to while standing 14, but you do get a while standing 14 launcher. Most characters who have a while standing launcher that is faster than 15 will get some sort of awkward low damage thing, unless you're playing, Kazuya and stuff. But if you think about Miguel, for example, if you think about Josie, they need to do kind of awkward or low damage combos to compensate for the fact that they get to launch faster than everybody else. But with Bob, because you don't really have good while standing block punishment overall, all you have is this 4, they've actually given you something extremely powerful for 14 frames for the launcher, which is the while standing 2-1. This is one of your most powerful launchers and your most powerful launcher overall with the character. However, you do need to access while standing to get it out, but if you do like instant while standing with this like that, you can get a very decent whiff punishes with it as well, so that's something to keep in mind. But this has good range and amazing damage, so it's a very, very powerful launcher, and I don't think there's any reason to use anything else most of the time. So for 14, that's really where your optimal while standing block punisher shows up. However, this move is very launch punishable, and almost everybody knows that they can launch this on block. And so sometimes when I'm not entirely sure that I'm gonna be in time to punish, what I will do, and these are some alternatives I'm gonna give you, is perform a while standing 2-1 back 3. This is completely guaranteed, and it comes out at 15 frames. That back 3 on the ground is guaranteed. While standing 1-2 back 3. And the reason I like to do this, even though you impact at 15 as opposed to 14, so you're a little bit slower, if your opponent blocks the while standing 1-2, this is very low risk. It's safe, so you're going to get away with using this, which I think is an important safe alternative. When you don't need the damage from this launcher, I think this can be a very decent option. The second hit of this string is duckable, and you have a mix-up for that in the shape of while standing 1-3, but that is of course a punishable mid to make up for the fact that you're mixing up this duckable high, right? So that's a very typical sort of Tekken kind of thing. But just for punishments, be aware that you have this for 15, and it's very decent. 45 damage is nothing to scoff at. And when you're, for example, ducking the Marn's leg from Hwoarang, which recovers way too quickly, and you sometimes don't get to punish in time, consider whether or not you want to risk getting launched by going for this move, or just settle for the 45 damage to get off of this while remaining relatively safe. I think that's something important to keep in mind. And that's really going to wrap it up for Bob's block punishment. So as you can see, very good stuff for normal standing stuff, slightly weird and slightly slow for the while standing stuff, but an extremely powerful 14 frame launcher from while standing to make up for it. So I'm going to cut the video again, and we're going to start talking about some other Bob moves. I'll see you guys again in just a little bit. In this section, we're going to talk about all of Bob's fast close-up tools and poking attacks, and I think the logical place to start is just your normal one jab. This is bog standard in terms of its frame data, +1 on block, +8 on hit, so exactly what you would expect. You do, however, have a better range on the one jab than you would see on most other characters. It's been nerfed in this version. This used to be some of the best jab range in the entire game, but it's still above average, so it's an important poke for you, and you should use it the same way you would use your one jab with any other character. The 1-1, which is a fast little natural extension right there, is actually very decent for pokes. It's only -1 on block, and you get +5 on hit, which I think is very decent. The 1-2 is -3 and +3, and the reason you might use this is that it has this extension 1-2 1+2. The 1+2 is delayable, as you can see right here, and it's going to counter hit launch the opponent as well as wall splat them at the wall. So let's see if we can show that. There you go. It's not supremely useful. It's -13 on block, so it's not something that I recommend you use a lot, but if you think that your opponent might swing, you can delay the 1+2 right there and go for a cheeky wall splat. It's not exceptionally powerful or anything. Next, I'm going to give you 1-4. We mentioned this in the punishment section, but I think it's a great little string. You get 22 damage. The counter hit properties of the 4 extension are amazing. You can get some really good damage off of this if you're able to reach them with the spin. Let's just quickly show what that looks like. Like that, and then you can combo, and what will happen a lot of the time is your opponent attempts to sidestep your one jab, and when they do and go straight for an attack, if you do 1-4, they will actually get counter hit by the 4 after the sidestep, which is pretty cool. It's a decent little string. -6 +5. Next, I'm going to give you 1 down 4. This is a move that I see in the comments. People tell me I don't use enough, and you're so right, because this move is absolutely fantastic. It's this super fast, one jab into a low. It's natural, so you can use it for punishment, even though you shouldn't, because it's minus on hit. It's minus 1 on hit, minus 12 on block, but it's fast enough that your opponent, even if they block the jab by itself, are almost never going to be able to parry or block this. So it's just a really great way of harassing people and stacking damage on them. It's a great round opener, and it's just a great harassment tool overall. I think this is an absolutely fantastic move, so I should definitely use it more. You don't really get anything particular on counter hit, as you can see right here. If it did give you like guaranteed back threes on the floor on counter hit, that would have been really amazing, but unfortunately that's not the case. But 1 down 4, even though you don't see me use it, it's a move that you should definitely be using a lot. It's very, very good. 2-1-4, we talked about this in the punishment section as well. Basically 2-1 is a great little poke string, and then sometimes you can tack on the cheeky 4, and if you do, and if you get this, you can get guaranteed back 3 on the floor, like so. And as you can see right there, if you do get counter hits on the second hit of the string, so the 2 right there, the 4 becomes guaranteed and you get the back 3 on the floor. And when you do that and the whole thing hits that way, let's see if we can show just how much damage that is. It's actually a pretty huge chunk. So you can get really big damage, but this is something that is going to be sidewalked to the right by a lot of advanced opponents, so it's something that you should use very sparingly, but it can work even against good opponents. And when the opponent just blocks this 4 extension, which they will a lot of the time, you know, they don't sidestep it, it's minus 4, which means that it's actually a very good setup for a power crush at the wall. So for example, I will do 2-1-4 and they'll block that, and then I go for the belly, and because you're only at minus 4, you're usually going to armor through their retaliation, which will give you a wall spat for really good damage. So that's pretty cool setup tool as well, even though, like I say, it can be sidewalked by advanced opponents, so you got to be careful. Next, let's talk about the 4 by itself. A beautiful little move. It's a little bit on the slow side for my taste. I think this would have actually been balanced at 11. It would have been very balanced at 12, but it impacts at 13. So, like with many of Bob's generic tools, you get slower impact frames than you normally would. This is minus 9 on block, which is kind of standard for a Magic 4. Minus 9 on block, plus 7 on hit, and the plus 7 on hit is obviously very good, but this is mainly a counter hit tool, and when you counter it with this, you can get seriously nice damage. It's not a bad move at all. So even though it does impact a little bit on the slow side at 13 and doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of range, I think it's very respectable and one of your best counter hit tools. So you should use it in the same way you would a Magic 4 with another character, but you need to be just really get into your head that it's not 11, it's 13. And that's when it comes to counter hit moves specifically, the difference between 11 and 13 is pretty huge, because when you're counter hitting, you're trying to sneak something in during the impact animation of your opponent, and so to be able to do that successfully, you're working with very small margins. So a 2-frame gap right there is pretty major, and you should keep that in mind. So be aware of the impact frames, but it is a very good move. I really like it. Next, I want to get to really my favorite poke string with Bob, and really your main sort of poking mid, extremely important move, which is the back 2. This is your substitute for what would be your generic down forward 1 mid poke on a normal character. Bob's is a little bit weird, but the back one is the substitute, and it's absolutely fantastic. It has massive range, it impacts at 13 frames, it hits very low to the ground, meaning that it is extremely floaty, so you can use it to hit opponents who are rolling on the ground. You can use it to scoop people up when you're trying to combo, and it's just an amazing mid poke overall. I absolutely love this move, and you do have some pretty cool and important extensions. The back 2 by itself is minus 5 on block, which is quite a lot for a fast mid poke like this, so be aware of that, but you get a very nice plus 6 on hit. The first extension you need to know about is back 2-2. This is natural for 22 damage, which is very cool. Only minus 3 on block, and you get a massive plus 8 on hit, so what a fantastic poke string. However, the second hit right here is duckable, so you're working with something that is very very similar to down forward 1-1 from Miguel, down forward 1 from Katarina, down forward 1-4 from Elisa. That kind of string where you do have a very fast high extension off of your main mid poke that is duckable, but it's difficult enough to do that your opponent is rarely going to do it, but some people definitely will, and so try it on most opponents is my tip. And if they do have the reaction speed and the presence of mind to duck this on reaction, then you need to cut back on it a little bit because it can be dangerous. But there is a way to further mitigate your opponent's ability to deal with this string, and that is to tack on the third part of the string, which is the 4. So back 2-2-4. The back 2-2-4, you can see that the third hit there is a mid, and so even though your opponent can duck the second hit, sometimes, a lot of the time, when they try to punish you from while standing, they will get caught by this mid. So it's kind of like a safety mid to make your opponent worried about trying to interrupt you here. And should be said that if they are very fast, they can go into a fast while standing launcher like that, just twitch duck and launch you, and they will catch you before the 4 comes out. But they first of all need to be fast enough to react to the high, and then they need to be fast enough that they actually punish you before the mid comes out. And it's rare. It does happen, and it's very important to know that it can happen, but it is rare, and overall the string is really quite safe. If they do get hit by the 4 here, by the way, like that, you have a final hit in the string, which is another 4. So the full string is back 2-2-4-4, and when they get hit by the third hit, like that, you're going to get all kinds of wall splats and stuff. So it's scary for the opponent to try and interrupt this string, meaning that you can use it to oppress them a lot of the time. So you're using back 2 by itself, you're poking with back 2-2 for its great frame data, and you're tacking on the 4 as a safety hit to make sure that the opponent is scared of trying to duck and punish the second hit. And then the 4th hit, the extension, only very rarely throw it out when you think your opponent's going to try and interrupt you and do it wrong, because you can get the wall splat. But be very aware that the 4th hit, the high right there, is also very duckable, and it actually gets ducked quite a lot at higher ranks. So overall, the string is just this extremely powerful nexus of pokes with Bob. It's very, very good. The back 2 by itself is amazing, but you need to be aware of the limitations of this string, and they are numerous. And so playing Bob against an advanced opponent, I think, involves a lot getting a feel for how they're going to attempt to deal with this string. Most people would just elect to stand block and see what happens, and then take their turn once you're done. And that's really the safest way of dealing with it, but you're just going to have to sort of get a feel for what they want to do. Needs to be mentioned that this is also a very good spin move, this entire string, and you are going to use it in some combos, meaning that it's, you know, very basic because it's just one string. But that's another application of the move that we will talk about in later sections. But it's very good for stuff like, you know, when you wall splat them from the from a range like that, and then you want to get stuff on the side. This is one of your best options for creating these like multiple wall splats. So it's an extremely versatile tool. It's like your Swiss Army knife with the character, and you should use it a lot. Let's see if there's anything I forgot to mention about the string. The back 2-2-4, which should give you some frame data for that. It's -9, meaning that it's safe, which is amazing, and you get a very decent +7 on hit right there, which is great. So the safety of this string can be amazing, depending on, you know, internet lag, depending on your opponent's youth and reaction speed, and so on. Next, let's give you a more sort of traditional mid poke in the shape of your down forward 1. This is not 13 frames like it would be on most other characters. It's 14, meaning that it's on the slow side. Still very fast though. It gives you -3 +6. So it's very similar to what you would see for a normal down forward 1 for a typical character at 13. It doesn't have a lot of the weirdness associated with the back 2, but it's very good. The extension is down forward 1-2. Down forward 1-2 is -12, which is dangerous, and you get down forward 1-2, you get +4. when you hit with it. So it's decent, but I would say go for the down forward 1 by itself like 90% of the time. The extension is not all that good, but you can catch people with it. If this were Crimson Dawn from Kazumi, you would, get all kinds of wall splats and stuff, which is so much better. So this is like a nerfed shitty version of that, and I can't really recommend it. Another comparable move would be down for 1-2 from Miguel, but that's like a very important move for him because he uses that to mix up down for 1-1, which is his version of this duckable string. But there's nothing you're mixing with this string. There's nothing you can use to incentivize your opponent to duck into this mid extension, meaning that I think it's a pretty shitty extension overall. But the down forward 1 by itself is really quite good, and you do use it in combos as well. Next, we need to talk about down forward 2, which I think is a great move with this character. It's one of your main counter hit launchers. It's 15 frames to impact, which is kind of slow, but it's very safe. You're -8, and you get a giant launch when you do get the counter hit. So it's very good for starting combos. Something weird about this move is that it does cause this weird kind of floaty stun kind of thing when you hit the opponent, meaning that if they don't break out of this, you can actually do flow combos right after hitting with this. So if we turn off all guard on my opponent here and just assume that he doesn't really know how to play, you can see I can float him out of this on normal hit if I don't get the counter hit, and do all kinds of stuff to him with like a float combo, but this is something that you should not try and use as a strategy. Almost nobody's ever going to fall for it. Your main use for this is like a fast mid poke that is 15, so slightly slower than your best stuff, but it does have that amazing counter hit property, and it does actually have some minor crush properties as well. It's a very good round starter. It will beat 1-2s and counter hit them and stuff, so a very decent little move, and one of your main counter hit launchers along with the standing 4. Standing 4 is faster but high. This is slightly slower but mid. Very good move. Next, let's give you some homing moves. The forward 4 is your main homing move with Bob. It's long range and it's high. It's 16 frames to impact, so really quite fast for what it is, but it does give you very good damage because you get a guaranteed back 3 for a total of 34 damage, which is really quite good. And if you do hit with this near the wall, you can get down 3+4 guaranteed for slightly more damage still. So it's a very good fast little homing move, and if you do get a counter hit with this, it will lead into this little weird attack throw for a guaranteed 45, which is even more than you would get normally. So it is very good when you counter hit with it. It's also an important spin move for a lot of your combos, but when you're trying to hit people who are sidestepping you, this is a very good move. I would have loved for this to be slightly faster, but maybe it would have been too good then. But that's the main homing move I'm going to recommend that you use with the character. And it does wonders at the wall, even though it won't wall splat for you because it will force them to the ground in this way. You can get that guaranteed down 3+4 for good damage, and it will catch people who have their back against the wall and they're trying to walk out, which is pretty cool. Next, I'm going to mention your sidestep 1+2, and this is your sidestep lariat. It's like a version out of your normal 4-4-2 out of a sidestep, and so this is a close-up tool that you will use when you're trying to be evasive, just as a go-to when you're trying to do something out of sidestep. So for example, you jab, get blocked, sidestep lariat. Works wonders at the wall for wall splat, so you get blocked right here, your opponent wants to swing, you sidestep lariat, and you get a wall combo. It's great, and this move is actually safe at -5, which I think is actually surprisingly good. Yeah, you can use this as just a safe knockdown mid option out of a sidestep for when you want to try and be evasive with sidesteps, and it's extremely good for that. So what a good tool for this character. The range is not massive, but it's decent, and it's an amazing tool for wall splats at the wall as well. So something to keep in mind in your close-up game if you're the kind of person who likes to poke into sidestep a lot. I think it's very good for that. Alright, next I want to give you Bob's main Power Crush move, which is an amazing move. It's the forward 1+2, the Belly Smash. This is a 15 frame impact move that has armor on frame 8 to frame 14, so it only activates on the 8th frame, the armor, but it is very reliable, very powerful, and has more range than you would expect. It has kind of like a little bit of ghost range on it, and you know, you just hit them with like the belt buckle, it will connect. So it's really quite powerful, and you're going to use it for wall splats, or you know, any kind of situation where your opponent is at advantage and you think they're going to swing. You go through it with this thing, and it's really, really reliable. What a great move for Bob. One of my favorite armor moves in the game. Very similar to back 4 from Miguel. You're going to apply it in a lot of the same situations. It is -13 on block, which is to be expected, but you're at least never going to get launched for using it. And because of the good range, sometimes you actually just completely get away with using it without being punished. So extremely good. And yeah, I think that's it for like main close-up tools with Bob. Couple of more moves we should mention. Your down jab, by the way, is going to be down back 1 with Bob when you want to use down jabs, because you have a down one. Which is a half decent move. I'm not going to talk about it in depth in this section. And you do have stuff like, you know, down back 2 and down 2. So if you want a down jab, go for down back 1 for the input. And then the last move I want to mention in this section, another move that I underuse, is your backswing blow. You do actually have a pretty crazy backswing blow. It's back forward 1. This has really insane evasive properties. Your opponent can't do a lot at all to catch this, and so, you know, jab jab, get blocked, backswing blow is going to beat almost anything that they can do. It deals really good damage. You get a knockdown on counter it, which is cool, and 30 damage. Nothing massive. It's not going to launch them, you know, like Dragonov's backswing blow or anything, but it is very good when you're confident in your read that your opponent's going to swing. It's -12 on block, and you get a really nice +9 on hit, which is pretty massive. So it's a decent move to keep in mind as well. I think that's going to wrap it up for the moves I want to talk about in this section. Next, I want to give you some important lows. So we're going to make another cut in the video, and I'll see you guys in the next section. Next, I want to talk about all of Bob's important lows, and I'm just going to start this out by mentioning the fact that you do have a Hell Sweep with this character, which is of course very interesting. This is completely unseeable. It's 33 damage and a knockdown, and at some ranges to the wall, it will actually wall splat the opponent for a full combo, but that's very specific. It's only going to happen quite rarely. The input is crouch dash down forward 4 1+2. And this is completely unseeable, so extremely powerful. You can use it to harass people from a range. You can use it to knock them down and tack on damage in the close-up game. You're going to have to learn how to do it quite fast. You're going to have to learn how to do it quickly out of a sidestep and so on. So it is a little bit input heavy, but it's not necessarily all that difficult. It's something that I recommend that you practice if you're not used to it. But just, you know, forward, neutral, down, down, forward, and then the hold down, forward, press 4 and 1+2, and you're going to get the Hell Sweep every time. Very good, and it's similar to Kazuya in a way, a difference being that Bob sort of knocks his opponent straight in front of him, like that, as opposed to the side, which is important when you're using it for like wall breaks. It will break the wall, by the way, and wall splats and so on, but very important move, and you're gonna want to mix this up with mid, so let's mention that in the crouch dash section actually, but that's just one of your main lows that I thought I should mention first. It's obviously going to be very launch punishable on block at -28, so make sure you don't get it blocked, but if you do get it out in time and you perform it fast enough, that's only going to happen when your opponent hard reads you. But let's leave the Hell Sweep behind for now and talk about some more generic low pokes. Down back 3 is my favorite low with this character. I think it's absolutely amazing. It impacts quite slow at 20, so this trend of having his generic tools impact quite slow, continues with Bob. But apart from the slowness, the properties of this move are absolutely fantastic. You get great range and great tracking, although if you look at like that right there, Bob will step with his left leg from his left to his right, and if the opponent is at a slight angle, he will sometimes sort of step over their leg to the side like that, meaning that it can lead to some pretty frustrating whiffs every once in a while. But for the most part, it's very reliable, and it's got great range because of the huge instep of the animation. On counter hit, you get one of those great toe break stunts, similar to down 2 from Dragunov, and I honestly think that this is a very comparable move to down 2 from Dragunov in a lot of ways, except for the fact that you don't get that massive high crush, of course, which is one of the best parts of that move. So it's not nearly as good, but it's still very good. And my main sort of favorite mid for quick mix-ups when I need a low with this character, for example in this scenario right here when I'm plus, I go for the down back 3 for the low, and then maybe I mix that up with something like back 2-2 for the mid. But it's a very good low poke and one of my main recommendations for like ending rounds and stuff. It's a really great move. Only -12 on block, so you're never going to get launched for using it, even against characters like Kazuya, and you get a cute little +2 on hits, so you can use it for some minor setups if you want to. Next, I'm going to mention down back 4-4. Not massively important, but the really cool thing about this sort of gimmicky string is that the full string is down back 4-4-4. The third hit is obviously extremely telegraphed and parryable, but the first 2 hits are pretty interesting because even though the low impacts at 24 frames, meaning that it is reactable, if you do the mid extension, nothing your opponent can do can punish or interrupt this. If they block the first part and they try and do a while standing 4, they're going to get hit by the extension. If they try and sidestep and stuff, they're still going to get caught. So it's actually pretty annoying for the opponent to try and deal with this, and you can every once in a while try and tack on the final hit as well if they're going to try and get in after the first 2 hits. So it's surprisingly safe a lot of the time. You can use it for Oki at the wall. I just thought I'd mention it, but it is gimmicky and it impacts the 24. But just be aware that I recommend that you do the extension a lot of the time to improve the overall safety of the move. But it's not a main low for the character. Next, I'm going to mention down 3. Down 3 is very punishable, but it does have high crush, which you lack with this character. You lack high crush on your lows, and this is going to take a pretty large instep and hit the opponent from downtown. So it's good for like round enders and stuff, but if you do get this blocked, you're at -18, so you're going to go for a ride. Very dangerous, and it's -7 on hit as well. So when you do get a hit with it, you're going to have to like backdash out and think of something else. Don't use it for a setup tool. But you can use it when you need that one hit that's going to high crush. The extension is down 3-4, which is a counter hit launcher for massive damage. However, not only is the low by itself launch punishable, the 4 extension here, down 3-4, is duckable and launch punishable. So any scenario when you're applying this low, you're putting yourself at significant risk. So you need to be very aware of that. It's gimmicky and it's kind of like a panic move. The down 3 by itself is dangerous for a low poke, but it has its applications because of the range and high crush. So I just thought I'd mention it in this section. When you do need a fast low poke just for whatever, down 4 is your like main option, but this has bad range, as you can see right here, compared to down back 3. However, it impacts at 16, so it is one of the fastest options you have, and it needs to be mentioned for that reason. It's also only -12 on block, which is not that bad, -1 on hit, so you're at disadvantage on hit, which is to be expected for a move like this, but the range is really quite poor, so just be aware of that. But when you need to tack on a little fast low, it's there. And then the last low I'm going to mention in this section that I think is important is down back 3+4. And this is another really high risk option with this character. It's unseeable at 19 frames to impact, so it can be powerful for a mix-up tool, and it gives you 26 damage and this weird butt flop on the opponent. They're sort of forced to fall down and get back up. It's not a real knockdown, but it does mean that you get some pretty serious frame advantage at +6 on hit. +6 on hit is very rare for a low, so it's powerful for that reason, and the 26 damage by itself is just really respectable, but you are minus 31 on block, so it's a stagger low. You're definitely going to get fucked up if you get it blocked, so be confident in your reads when you're applying this move, but when you are, it really is quite decent. But as you can tell, overall with Bob, you're either taking massive risks with your lows, like this move, the Hell Sweep, and this move, or you don't really get great properties overall. I think the best middle of the road is really the down back 3, and you're just going to have to get used to the fact that your lows aren't really that fast with this character, but that's kind of fine. And a lot of the time when you just need to chip at the opponent, actually one down 4 is going to work wonders. It's natural, but even if you get the jab blocked, very few people are going to do anything about this on reaction. So really a powerful low and harassment tool that you will use the way you would use a low poke to chip the opponent is really one down 4. So don't forget about one down 4 when you're considering lows, even though it's not a real low. It's kind of like a high with a low extension, but it deserves an honorable mention here because it is a fantastic little string for this character. Okay, that's gonna wrap it up for the lows I really want to mention with this character, and we're gonna move on to some of your powerful spacing tools with this character. So I'll see you again after the cut. Now that we've talked about Bob's generic pokes and his lows, it's time to talk about how Bob attacks the opponent when he is keeping them out, spacing them out, or whiff punishing them from a range. And this is something that Bob is very, very good at, so we're about to talk about some of his most important moves. I'm going to start this by talking about his forward forward 2, also just known as Bob's Lariat, and it looks like this. This is an extremely, extremely important move. So let's start by mentioning that it is minus 8 on block, meaning that it is very safe, and it will give you a knockdown on hit if you are close to the wall but not completely at the wall. So right about that range right there, you can get a guaranteed down 3+4 on the floor for an extra 24 damage, which is very cool. And in some certain ranges, after having done that down 3+4, you can get a guaranteed lariat again on the wall, but that's very specific and kind of dangerous, so make sure that that is something that you try out in practice mode before you start to actually apply it. Now, very important to mention about this move that it comes out of forward forward 2, which means that you can do it fast like that and get very stumpy range. And what you would prefer to do is to delay the input of the 2 quite a bit, and that will give you a lot of extended range on the move, kind of like that. And you can see how much more range, if you look at that short range right there compared to that, how different it is. And this is very, very important, especially when you are playing against advanced opponents. And this move is completely crucial when you're playing against opponents who are good at this game, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, if they are Korean backdash canceling a lot, it's very possible for them to sort of go out of the range of this move when you're trying to apply it, allowing them to whiff punish, and so you want to have as much range as possible. The other really important thing about delaying the input of the 2 for extra range on this move is the fact that because that constitutes a dash for Bob, he's going to realign himself with the opponent as he is moving forward, and this means that if the opponent is moving sideways, it's going to be hard for them to escape this move because you are giving it extra tracking by dashing forward. And so there are 2 very, very important reasons you want to delay the input of your 2 for this move, giving you more range. If you just want to do it very close to the opponent, which is something you will do quite rarely, it is obviously better to get it out as fast as possible, and in those cases just press the 2 as soon as possible. But in most cases you are using this from a range, and in those cases, because your opponent is going to be very mobile, it's important to have as good range and tracking as possible. Now, I mentioned that this is important against good players, and if you're playing against somebody who is looking to capitalize on your mistakes, who's waiting for you to mess up so that they can launch you or whiff punish you or block punish you, this move is one of your best friends, and I've used this very successfully against people who have true Tekken God rank in this game, so some of the best players who play this game online, and it's still very, very useful. It is fast enough that they're not going to be able to react to it in any way, so it's explosive, it's got tracking, and it's got range, meaning that if you happen to do it and it overlaps with something they do and you interrupt it, then you're going to get that really nice 25 damage and knockdown. The move becomes even more important in a few certain matchups. For example, when you're playing against Shaheen, this is like the most important move for winning that matchup, in my opinion. The reason being that Shaheen excuse me, is a character who really likes to run into his most comfortable range and then start ducking and teabagging you, kind of like that. And what he wants to do from that range is to threaten a slide, right? And then maybe mix that slide up with some sort of mid, maybe a while standing 2, maybe an orbital. But when you're playing against a character who's going to try and crouch right out of your range and just sit there, if you can explode across the screen with a really big mid that is going to kill people who are ducking, that can really mess up one of the core strategies for a character like that. And so when I'm just moving around the screen and I'm playing against a Shaheen who likes to do a lot of slides, I just wait until I get a feeling that he might just be, going for one of those random ducks that those guys go for, looking to see what I'm going to do, try and get a feel for what I'm doing. And when I get the sense that it's about to come out, I just attempt this lariat, and sometimes I get that massive knockdown, good damage. And if I do get blocked, it's just -8, which is not that dangerous at all. So it's a very, very good move for those reasons. You're going to use it for a long range wall splat as well. And you are going to apply this move for Oki. For example, Lariat. After Lariat on the floor, if they're just getting up straight up, it can hit them a lot of the time. If they're rolling to the side and then getting up, you realign and you get them with another Lariat again. So it is a good mid for Oki as well, and just a really, really important move overall. It becomes more and more important the better your opponent is, because what you want in those cases are moves that are relatively low risk while still giving you a potent reward, and this move falls straight into that category, making it extremely important because you're not taking huge risks as long as you're not whiffing, and you do have the potential of getting some pretty serious damage when it does connect with stuff like this. So I think it's absolutely crucial. The next move I'm going to mention here is the fact that you do have a slash kick. It's your while running 3, and it's just the slash kick. But that's good if you're the kind of person who likes to do slash kicks a lot. Then you're going to find this one useful. The impetus while running or instant while running 3, like that, it's going to give you between +9 to +15 on block, depending on range and hitbox. You're not going to get anything guaranteed, of course, but you do get a nice powerful knockdown on hit. Very generic slash kick, but some people really love slash kicks for Oki and stuff, so it's there if you want to use it. You have another unique while running option that is specific to Bob, however, which is the while running 3+4, which I refer to as the Meatball Rush, but you can call it what you prefer. Very similar to the slash kick in terms of being a while running plus on block chunky long range mid like this. Both moves are very linear, and so your opponent is going to comfortably move around them. This one does slightly less damage but gives you slightly better frames on block most of the time. The variable ranges between +8 to +18 for the Meatball Rush, but the interesting thing about the Meatball Rush that differentiates it from the slash kick, in my opinion, is the fact that it will hit people who are on the ground. And so if I knock Paul down on the ground and he's way over there, I can run in with this, and if he gets up crouching, I'm going to hit. If he gets up standing, I'm going to get plus frames, and if he stays on the ground, I'm going to hit him on the ground. So the way for him to get away from it, of course, is to move sideways somehow, maybe roll on the ground, maybe get up and sidewalk, and so on, which is very dangerous, can get you launched from the side if you're the ball player. But it does cover a lot of options, and it is surprisingly fast, has some pretty crazy range. So it is a somewhat useful move that I thought I should mention here. Now, in this section, these are really the main moves that I wanted to talk about, except for 2 other options that are so important and so major that they deserve their completely separate section. One of them is to crouch dash from a range into stuff like Hell Sweep. But the other one we're going to talk about right now, I will put a separate time code here though, because this needs to sort of be considered its own section, because we are about to talk about what is, in my opinion, Bob's most important move. I was thinking about like how important I think this move is the other day, and I came to the conclusion that if Bob didn't have this move, I don't think he would function as a character. And if you nerf this move just a little bit, I think he would be so much worse that it would be pretty ridiculous. The fact that he has this move and that it functions exactly in the way that it does is such an important, vital part of this character that I'm trying to sort of overemphasize it here, because if you are trying to learn how to play this character, I think this move deserves to have, you know, a lot of your attention. Now, let's talk about it. The move is up forward 1+2, the headbutt, and its different extensions. So, the first thing I'm going to mention is that the up forward 1+2 by itself is 16 frames to impact and has massive range. It's going to hit from way downtown. It's a mid, even though it has a pretty high hitbox, and some options that go under highs will also go under this. Annoyingly, for example, down back 3 from Armor King is a good example, but a lot of Katarinas, lows, and so on. But it is a mid. It has, like I said, massive range. It's very reliable, very chunky, very, very good. It has 2 extensions, upward 1+2, 1+2, and upward 1+2, 4. Both of these extensions are completely natural. So what does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is that you're looking at your main whiff punisher with this character. We've talked about how you have pretty slow launchers with this character, your fastest thing being 18. Your hop kick being 20. Your fastest launcher really is your while standing 2-1, but that's only available from while standing. And so most of the time when you want a quick whiff punish, this is going to be your best option, because 16 is relatively fast, but the range is massive. You jump in from way downtown, you're crushing lows as you do it, and you're going to tear this massive chunk of 40 damage out of your opponent. Now, which one of the options should you use for your whiff punisher? Well, it's down to your preference. The upward 1+2, 1+2 will give you 40 damage, which is big, and send them quite far away for a knockdown, which means that this has better wall splatting capabilities than the other extension, even though both options will wall splat. The 4 does this standing screw thing, so they need to be within the distance that Paul is spinning right there for that to be an effective wall splat with the 4, whereas the 1+2 will wall splat from like way downtown. The 1+2 is obviously better for damage, but the 4 will give you some very nice setups, because on hit this gives you a massive +14. Now, you don't get anything guaranteed after this. You can't get any like guaranteed follow-ups, but you have a completely guaranteed mix-up you can apply here, and really good options that are going to reach your opponent. For example, my favorite for the low is the down back 3. It's comfortably going to reach them. It's chunky and nice. I really love this 3 right here. It's perfectly set up by the 4, but you can use that and mix it with any kind of mid, maybe back to 2 for something fast, maybe you know, down forward 1-2 if you want to get really funky, and maybe try a launcher, and maybe go for something like down forward 3+4 4 or something like that. But it's a nice mix-up situation. Your forward 4 is going to be there if you need the homing move, and you can get the back 3 guaranteed on the floor and so on. So your choices between they both have the same range because they both come out of the same starting move, but 40 damage and the knockdown on a long range wall splat or a short distance wall splat, 5 less damage but a powerful mix-up on top of that, and so they're both very decent on hit. I would say when you're specifically whiff punishing, maybe go for the 1+2 most of the time, because 40 damage and a knockdown is good, and at that kind of range that you put them at, you can hunt them with powerful stuff like Lariat, so it's not that bad at all. But the other major application of the move is at the wall, and this is going to be, in my opinion, like your major wall splatting tool. And that is major because I've mentioned earlier how I think Bob is a wall specialist and really loves to interact with the wall, and this move is one of the main reasons. So when you've put your opponent against the wall, maybe you've comboed them, you're gonna like hunt them like a fucking vulture from out here and just wait for them to twitch and fuck up, and then you're gonna be there with this massive, long range move and dealing really high damage wall combo to them. And so they can like never relax. Even good players, like even seriously high rank players, when you're knocking them down, if you just backdash out and you're applying Oki from like out here, they will sometimes like do get up kicks stupidly because they don't think you're going to be able to be like fast enough to hurt them and wall splat them from out here, but they're wrong because of the massive range of this move. So you're going to hunt them when they're trying to get off the ground. You're going to like wait for the whiff and then collect these massive wall splats. Okay, so it's very, very good for that, but it's also your main whiff punisher out in the open. I'm going to talk about how to do a really cool wall setup that I love for this string right now, but first let's give you the complete frame data of both extensions. So they impact at 16, both of them, and then the 1+2 extension is -17, meaning that it is launch punishable. Very important to note. Most people, because this is a prolific move, know that it is -17 and will be ready to launch punish it, so you need to be very aware of that. But then the 4 extension is only -1 on block, so it's very, very safe. And -1 is like a weirdly tiny amount of disadvantage for a powerful move like this, and that is something that a lot of people do not know, and even if they do know it, they fuck up and forget about it. Even I do when I play against Bob. So a really good setup when you're hunting for a wall splat with this character is you do upward 1+2, 4. And even though they can duck this 4 extension and launch you for that, they are unlikely to do it because of how scary the 1+2 extension is, especially at the wall, because the 1+2 extension will get them wall splatted. So while they might duck, most of the time they won't. And so they block this, and they're at -1, which is tiny, and you go straight into a power crush move, an armor move here, and it's very, very likely that they will swing. And when you're just at -1, that means that even if they jab, because the armor of this move activates at 8 frames, you're going to have armor on the 9th frame, meaning that their 10-frame jab is still going to get armored through, and you're going to get that wall splat. So it's a really great little setup. I've knocked people off of balconies with this setup before and everything else, but it needs to be emphasized that this move is very, very risky because of the duckability of that extension and the launch ability of that extension. And so you need to use both. Sometimes you will do neither. Sometimes you will do it into a stance, which we will talk about later. Sorry, I just turned down the volume on my headset. I hope you can still hear me. But it's very important to be comfortable with this string, right? So we talked about the lariat earlier, very low risk but a decently high reward. With this, you're dealing with very high reward but also very high risk, and so you need to know why and how and when you're doing this string. And a lot of the time when you're doing it, you are going to get launched for your troubles, but if you're doing it the right way, the favorable situations, the ones where you come out on top, will far outweigh the ones where you do eat that combo in favor of this move. Kind of like how a hell sweep will get launch punished when it gets blocked, but it's still so useful and is usually going to come out in your favor that you want to use it anyway. The 1+2 extension for this is delayable, which makes it even more potent for wall splatting. And it's even the case that if you are very fast, if you see like this, if you delay it way too much, you will lose the natural property. But you can hit confirm it like I did right there and still have the natural property, meaning that it's just even better for that wall splat. If you can hit confirm it, it's amazing, but it's a little bit difficult to do. And if you are slightly too slow and you do get blocked, you're at -17, so it's dangerous. But it's important to note, the 4 extension cannot be delayed in any way. You need to do it sort of right away or not at all. So your main whiff punisher, your main wall splatting tool, extremely important. And now I'm going to talk about another strategic application of the string that I absolutely love. Something that they've done in the new season is given Bob the option of rolling into backwards Meatball and forwards Meatball out of the up forward 1+2 by itself. This is something that looked really unimpressive to me when I first became aware of it, because I don't think the stance is very good. Excuse me. It turns out that this is a massive change for the character, because up forward 1+2 into roll back becomes extremely safe and extremely annoying for the opponent. So I can do this, check him with this. If I get the hit, it's 15 damage, and then I just roll back. If I get blocked, I roll back. I'm back at a distance where I'm comfortable, and my opponent can't do a whole lot about it. Now, there are definitely characters in this game who on block can chase this roll down and hit you here. But it's rare for that to happen. They first of all need to be very aware of how and when and what move to use to do it. But they also need to be brave enough to actually try, because if you jump in with this, you have these powerful extensions that are going to do a lot of damage, and if they swing, they might swing straight into that, and so it's dangerous to try and chase this back roll, even if they have an option that could comfortably do it, which a lot of the time they won't. It's even more dangerous for them to swing when you learn that the 4 extension is actually a counter hit launcher, so they don't want to swing into this randomly trying to hunt the back roll. This means that it is pretty much your best round ender, and you will see in some of my Bob gameplay when I just need that last hit or 2 hits at the end of the round, I'll run up, do this, roll back, or I will wait until they come a little bit closer. I'll do this, roll back, and if they don't know how to chase it down, or they're not comfortable trying to chase it down, I can basically do this until I find the hit and end the round, and they will be very frustrated. So as a stalling technique, it's very good. Bob doesn't really have those things where he can like throw himself on the floor, you know, like a King or a Brian, where they can do this really safe knockdown mid or something, and even if it gets blocked, they're just on the floor at minimum risk. But he can do this to stall at the end of the round, which is important. So it's a great harassment tool, and I think it's very powerful. We're going to talk about the Meatball stance itself next, but when you get this on hit and you roll forward and you hit confirm it, you can sort of mix up out of Meatball. It's not very powerful, but we're going to talk about the moves out of this stance in the next section. But in my opinion, while you can do that, and while I will do that and sometimes find counter hits when I do, if I know that this is going to hit, I will usually just do one of the extensions that are already built in without going into the stance, because I know I'm going to get great damage or a great setup in the case of the 4. Most of the time when you're using this move, you will want to visually confirm a whiff before you let it rip. So you're moving out, and because of this move is so important, it basically means that tip range for this move is the optimal range for the character. Because not only is the headbutt going to be dangerous at that range, which is about right here, the lariat is always very dangerous at that range as well. And if they whiff something small, you're just barely able to reach them with your down back 1+2, which is your main whiff punisher that is an actual launcher. So right around here, tip range for all of these moves is your optimal range with the character, in my opinion, and really where you want to be. You can threaten them with hell sweeps out of a crouch dash from this range, no problem. Very, very good. Anything else we need to mention about this move? I mean, learn how to apply it. Be aware that you're taking a risk when you're applying it, unless you visually confirm the whiff first. If you have seen the whiff first, then I think the 1+2 extension is the best option most of the time because of the high damage. But if you're not sure that you've actually caught a whiff, doing the 4 most of the time is really good, because it's only -1 on block, and it's rare for them to attempt to duck because of how dangerous the mids are, right? But can definitely happen, so don't get launched, or at least try to. But what a fantastic move. And because you lack fast whiff punishers and you need to rely on this for whiff punishing, and because you love the wall and you're a character who specializes in the wall and this is your main wall splat tool, I think it just becomes this like central, really important tool for the character. I think that's enough for this section. I want to talk about stances next. I want to talk about crouch dash. I want to talk about Meatball. So we're going to make another cut in the video. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far. I'll see you guys again in just a little bit. Next, I want to talk about Bob's Meatball stance. Now, you have two versions of this stance. You have backwards and forwards. The manual transition for these stances are back 3+4 and forward 3+4 respectively, and these transitions are basically shit and you're almost never going to use them. Going into this stance like manually, there's not really a good reason to. The one fringe use I've seen from a serious player is that MBC, after he does that launch, will sometimes do a manual meatball forward into meatball 2 for a spin right there, but there are other combos that will give you similar or even better damage right there, so there's not really any reason to, I guess. But let's go through the stance for the sake of being thorough, and then by the end I also want to talk about Bob's rage game, because this stance comes into play out of his rage drive, which is actually a very, very important move for the character. Anyway, backwards meatball, I mentioned before, is a good defensive tool. You will mainly use it out of upward 1+2, and then the same thing for the forwards version is mainly going to come out of this upward 1+2. The moves are 1, which is your fast mid. This is -8 on block, +6 on hit, and will give you a very nice counter hit launch when you do counter it with it, which is cool. But it is rare for the opponent to actually swing into this stance, although it sometimes does happen. The next move is Meatball 2. This is your homing move out of the stance, and it is mid, it's slow, it's homing, it gives you a knockdown and a wall splat on hit and a full launch on counter hit. I think this is slow and clunky, and I almost never run into people who try and like side walk or, you know, sidestep meatball stance, so I don't really know why he needs a homing move here, because the stance is so fringe. It never really sees any use, but with a lot of these mix-up stances, Namco like to throw in a homing option to cover that sidewalk option. It's the same thing with, you know, Miguel, even though I think his sidestep options out of his stance, or his homing options out of his stance, are a lot better. But this is what you have. It's -11 on block, meaning that it is punishable, gives you a knockdown on hit. I don't think it's very good, but that's just my opinion. Next you have the 3. I think this move is kind of awful, but maybe that's up for debate. It's a high that is going to cause a nosebleed stun, but also give you a very cool +8 on block. So it's like your option for getting plus frames out of the stance on block on the opponent. I don't really see a whole lot of use for this. Like, are you really going to use this stance for setups to collect plus frames? Your opponent, like, if they do duck, are going to launch you when you do this. And if they don't, I mean, well, I guess the plus frames are kind of nice, but I think this is like fringe and not really useful at all. But if you want to get plus frames out of the stance, that's your option. If you really think that they're just going to stand there, but then again, if you really think that they're just going to stand there, maybe just do the low and collect a combo, you know. But that's up to you. Maybe you can find some strategic use for it. This comes down to my preference as a player, and I don't think this is a very good move. But maybe that's just me. You then have 3+4, which is the big mid where you sit on their face. You get 28 damage, which is very big. And so when you're really confident that they're going to duck because they're scared of the low option, which is a low launcher, this is what you can do. And so at the end of the round, when you're looking for that final hit and the opponent is really on edge, they're likely to panic into a duck, and you can catch them with 28 damage right there and kill them. But it's dangerous because you're between -14 to -18, and you force them into crouch with your back towards them. So it's a little bit of a weird situation on block, but they will usually do something to you on the back to really damage you for using this. And if they know exactly what they're doing, they will actually launch it some of the time. So yeah, it's a somewhat ambiguously useful mid here. I think that 1 is like your best option most of the time. It's fast, it has the counter property, it's safe on block. I really like the 1. And then the last option is going to be the low, which is the 4, and the 4 is a slow, sluggish, low launcher. And so what the opponent can actually do if they're good, if they know about this stance, is they can just like wait and see if you're going to do the 1, and if you don't do the 1, then they'll start ducking, and they have plenty of time to still block this 4 because it's so sluggish. So I don't think this is completely legit for like a mix-up stance, but every once in a while you can confuse the opponent. You can, you know, sneak under them with one of these low launchers, and when you do, it's a lot of damage. It's gimmicky. But overall, I would say if you find yourself in Meatball, like 90% of the time, just do the one. If you get a hit, that's nice. If you get a counter, even better. But if not, you know, it's like no big deal, because the stance isn't that major of a factor in any case. However, and this is also going to be its separate time code, we're going to talk a little bit about Bob's rage game and his rage drive right now, because I think that sort of ties into this. We can start by mentioning that your rage art is just a very long range mid, and apart from that, it's just a normal rage drive in every sense. So it's a normal mid rage sort of rage art with above average range. Nothing interesting to say about it, but the rage drive is so good that I've actually pretty much never used Bob's rage art in a match. Just having rage on him, because he has these good fast pokes, is good because it's going to amplify that damage. And then the rage drive is fantastic. So the rage art is not an extremely useful option unless you're really being rushed down and you're just trying to hard raid and armor through something. I don't really see the rage art as being an optimal way to spend your rage. Now the rage drive has changed in Season 2. The input is forward 2 plus 3, and it looks like this. If you hold forward, Bob is going to go into Meatball off of this stance, and very interestingly, if you do that on hit, Meatball 1 is completely guaranteed. Even though the combo counter resets right there, this is guaranteed, and you have to scale that damage down for rage. I think it actually does 13 with ground scaling as opposed to 14, but it's a guaranteed chunk of something like 12 or 13 damage at the end of that rage drive, which is very big, meaning that the damage here becomes pretty huge. It's like 39, yeah, so it's above 50 damage when you get a normal hit, which is pretty cool. The other, okay, so like you're at the end of the round, you're in rage, you think maybe your opponent's going to swing, you do this, you have extreme range, you jump and you go over lows. If you collect the hit, you deal a huge chunk of damage half the time you end the round. But if you somehow manage to launch your opponent or get them into the air some other way, you can now use this as a very, very powerful combo ender to get insane combo damage, and that means the rage drive is now versatile, which it was before, and it makes it so much better. So anytime that your opponent is spun or is wall splatted, you can connect with this rage drive and you're going to get massive damage, and you still get the guaranteed Meatball 1 at the very end. So any launch, if the opponent is in a spun state, you can just do this and you're going to get like that was just an improvised little shit combo where I spun right away, and it's still massive damage. If you start doing like real big combos and you have rage all the way through and then you end with this, I mean you're going to do upwards of 100 damage. If you get the wall, it's going to be like even bigger. It's difficult from this range to get the wall for Bob. Let's move a little bit closer, maybe something like this, something like that maybe. Yeah, so these are suboptimal combos. You can see the damage is really big. And an important thing to notice, if you're going to use this for a wall ender specifically, you can delay it so that you get that nice 60% sort of half floor, half wall scaling that you want on your wall enders and get even higher damage. So if I do it from this range and try and delay it a little bit, you can see that time I got the 60% scaling and the damage was even higher. So you can do some serious damage with this, and it becomes even more powerful when you consider the fact that Bob has this throw, right? He has this throw which will send the opponent into the air and allow you for a spin, and so you can use that to create a slightly more powerful combo than you would normally get off of that throw using the rage drive as well. And all of these factors combined sort of make Bob's rage art for the most part kind of obsolete, and I would prefer to use the rage drive most of the time. If you do get it blocked, which is the last scenario we need to discuss, and this is how it ties into Meatball, if you hold forward and do the Meatball transition anyway, you will cause your opponent, if you look at the massive hit stun, or sorry, block stun that Paul is going to be in here, you can see he gets that really heavy ass on his hands, and he kind of is really starting to get back up, meaning that you can come into Meatball with a serious amount of plus frames on block, and so you can sort of mix up out of the stance. If they panic and they duck because they're looking for that 4, you can go for the 1, get a quick little mid, and if you want to hard rate and go for something heavy, you go for the 3+4. You get that 28 damage and a knockdown, but both options are scary. Yeah, the 3+4 and the 4, I should say, because both can be launched if you mess up, but you have the option of going into a end of the round panicky mix-up when you do get this blocked, but you can also elect, of course, to just do this and then stop. So yeah, his rage drive is very good. It's very versatile, and it has been buffed, so I think it's an interesting aspect of the character and one of the major buffs that came to the character in the new season. Now that we've covered the sort of fringy but oddly prolific stance of Meatball and Bob's rage game, I think we need to talk a little bit about his crouch dash, which is of course his other major stance. So let's make another cut, and I'll see you guys after we come back. Next, we're going to talk about Bob's other stance, which is his crouch dash, and this is really quite important. It's a Mishima style crouch dash, which means that the input of it is forward and neutral, down, down, forward, and then the move of your choice. This might sound a little bit awkward if you're new to Tekken, but as you can see right here, you can learn how to get this out very quickly and very clean. Just takes a little bit of practice. Practice doing it from both 1P and 2P side, and it is an important part of the character. So if you are new and you do find this awkward or difficult to do, it is something that I recommend you spend some time in practice mode cleaning up, because if you want to, for example, like do combos with this as your spin move, you're going to have to learn how to do it quite quickly. And of course, it's important that you can get your hell sweep out fast enough that your opponent isn't going to react to it visually. So these are all important aspects of the character. So forward, neutral, down, down, forward for the dash, and then the moves are, first of all, 1, which is my favorite move out of the stance. This is a fast counter hit launcher and spin move. On normal hit, you get a wall splat, a knockdown, and 25 damage, so it's fantastic. And the frame data is amazing as well. It's only -2 on block. What a fantastic move. So you're going to use it for all kinds of different things, wall splats, counter hit launchers, spin moves, and all the rest of it. Very, very good, but it is important that you try and get this out as fast as possible. Obviously, if you're way out in here, you can delay it and do it late for a lot of extra range like that, but you're probably, you know, less likely to score counter hits with it unless you're playing some sort of mind game. But it's very, very good. Knockdown on hits, a -2 on block, fantastic. Duckable, of course. And it is used in a lot of his combos, so we're going to have to talk about that. For example, after this throw, you're going to want to do it, if not right away, which you can do like that, you can do it after a spin for extra damage. It's like a combo filler as well, but combos are a later section. Next, let's talk about the 2. The 2 is your big Shoryuken Dragon Punch launcher. It's completely balls to the wall and crazy, but when it does hit, you do get like crazy damage. So maybe sometimes it's worth going for, but it's not like the most solid option. You can see that's not even an optimal combo, and I got like 90 damage anyway, so it's very, very powerful, but it's -23 on block, so you're going to get launched for getting it blocked. You can't really call it a whiff puncher because of how slow it is, but you know how sometimes when you're at sort of this range, and you just sort of know that your opponent's going to duck or like do something, and you sort of preemptively whiff punish with it, it can work. You need a read to make it work, but you get a lot of damage when you do. Maybe you're at the end of the round, you think you might as well gamble, and your opponent is scared of the hell sweep and the duck, and you do this, and then you use your rage drive at the end of the combo, and you do like 120 damage. I mean, it can happen, so it has its uses, but it's not maybe supremely useful. It's not your preferred mix-up for the hell sweep, by the way, because if you use this for the mix-up, then you're just going to get launched after being blocked so many times. So don't use it as your main hell sweep mix-up. Next, you have the 3-2. This would be a good hell sweep mix-up if it weren't for the fact that the extension right there is a duckable high. This is -9 on block. It's going to break the floor. It's not really that good. I don't really see any ball players use it. I don't use it either, but you could like theoretically launch the opponent, spin them, and then do that for a floor break and stuff like that. But I don't think this is supremely useful in any capacity. It's there. It's a mid. So there you go. -9, but duckable. So be careful. But then again, who's going to duck it? Because the opponent probably has never seen it come out. Who knows? I'm not going to start experimenting with it, but maybe you can do that and let me know how it goes. Next, you have, of course, the hell sweep. Your most important, like, one of your most important moves for the character. I'd say along with the headbutt and the lariat. It's going to knock the opponent down, be unseeable, and impact around like 18 frames if you do it really fast. It's going to knock the opponent down, it's going to wall splat. It's something that the opponent's constantly going to be scared of. It incentivizes them to duck, even from a range. It's just really, really powerful and important. So definitely practice getting your hell sweep out fast. When it does get blocked, you are going to get launched, but it's just an issue of using it in a way where, even though you will sometimes get launched for using it, it is overwhelmingly in your favor. And just the fact that the move exists on your character is going to make the opponent scared and make them do stuff like duck in your face. So it is an important move, just by virtue of existing. And if you play against Mishimas and you know about their hell sweeps and how oppressive they can feel as an opponent, this is similar to that. It is very similar in its function. It's not quite as good as Kazuya's, in my opinion. I actually tested Kazuya's hell sweep a lot to compare it when preparing for this tutorial. I think that maybe feels a little bit more intuitive to connect with, but they're very, very similar moves overall. Very, very good. And next we're going to talk about your one of my other favorite moves out of this stance, and really one of my favorite Bob moves overall, which is your crouch dash 1+2. The reason this is really interesting is it's just a good mid overall that does massive damage, but it is your wall bounce move. And what that means is, as you can see here, you can get some insanely good damage for connecting with this, but unlike most wall bounce moves, this is actually a move that you would want to use at the wall, even if it didn't have the wall bounce property, which means that it actually becomes one of the few truly useful wall bounces in the game, and one of your best Oki tools at the wall. It's -10 if you don't charge it, which is not that bad at all. Usually not going to get punished. Even if it does, it's not that big. It does a massive chunk of damage on hit. It does the wall bounce, but if you're just out in the open out here and you want to maybe mix out the hell soup a little bit, you can use it. Be aware that the range is easy to overestimate. You can see right here that it's not that big. You really want to delay it a little bit to get the good range. So become comfortable with its range, and then you can charge this up, and it's going to do 35 damage, which is really big, and become -7, meaning completely safe on block. So what a fantastic move that you can do all kinds of cool combo things. But when I knock the opponent down at the wall and they're scared of the Oki, you know, they're scared of the wall hell sweep, this will catch a lot of get up options, and if it catches them, you know, getting up crouching or whatever, you're gonna get a full wall combo. So it's just really, really good. I think this move is fantastic. You have another wall bounce move, maybe we'll talk about it later. It's kind of more like weird and fringe, but it looks like that. But let's talk about that in the wall section. But those are all of your moves out of crouch dash, and I think they are, you know, some people have a Mishima style, some characters have a Mishima style crouch dash and then not really good enough stuff to do out of it that it becomes useful. But Bob really, like the hell sweep, just the hell sweep by itself is just such an important move. But the one here, great little counter hit move, great combo tool. The two, when you really want to party and go balls to the wall and you can spin with unblockables. The 1+2 at the wall. This thing's kind of shitty, but apart from that, it's an important stance, and it's one of the reasons I call Bob like intermediate as opposed to basic, because this is something that you will have to practice how to get better at with the character. I was not very familiar with Mishima style crouch dashing. Like, I could do it, but I never specialized in a character that uses it before I started playing Bob last month. But I've gotten to a point now where I can like do these moves really quickly, and it's not really a problem. So that means that anybody can do it, and you know, just practice it. And I mean, if you are a long-time Tekken player, then you're already familiar with this anyway. I think that's my section. Oh no, we've forgotten a move. I'm so glad I remembered. You have crouch dash 4, which is just your while standing 4, as you can see right here. So your while standing 4 looks like that, and this is your crouch dash 4. As you can see, you can get this out really quite quick enough that you can't even see the crouch dash, which is really good because it's a good mix-up tool for the hell sweep out of crouch dash. Even though you don't get anything massive, I mean, it's a nice little 16, you know, chunky mid, very safe, nice advantage on hit at the +5. That you get off of the normal while standing 4. So I think this is a very decent little move, and you can get some serious range, you know, by doing the crouch dash from way downtown. So that's very good too. And if you don't want to do something massive for your mix-up for the hell sweep, then that's really the sort of best neutral little option. What some people will do, if we're going to talk briefly about mids to mix up the hell sweep, when you're delaying it enough that your opponent can't see the crouch dash, right? And they think you're going to do a hell sweep. What do you want to do for a mid? Well, what MBC does a lot of the time, he will actually crouch dash in, and then he'll just do a hop kick, which is really bosses the wall, but it actually seems to work out a lot for him. But he's playing people who are very good at reacting to and predicting hell sweeps, right? You know, top level players in Korea, which is when that becomes a really useful strategy. I mean, most people are just going to stand there and either eat the hell sweep or block this hop kick, but that's an option that you do have. But I think the 4 is a good option most of the time. Or you can use the 1+2, like I said, which I think is very good as well. Alright, that's going to conclude my little section on the crouch dash. It's one of the reasons you remain very dangerous from your favorite range, which is out here. So you have, you have fucking hell sweeps, you have fucking headbutts, you have fucking lariats, and you have just great moves overall, long range punishment and whatever. So Bob is very, very good around range 2, and that's something important to take away about the character. I think we're done for now, so let's go into the really juicy stuff and start talking about some Oki and some combos. I'll see you guys after the cut. Alright, command history is on. Let's talk about some combos. This is going to be really fun. Bob has awesome combos. They're really fun to perform and to learn. Not necessarily very difficult, with a couple of exceptions, but basically what I'm going to do is I've got command history on. I have a long list of launchers here. I'm just going to show you my preferred options for a combo off of all of them, as well as include a couple of alternatives where appropriate. But we should probably just start with your most standard launcher, which is weird because it's a weird launcher. It's down back 1+2. You swipe them at the balls and throw them high in the air. 18 frames to impact, really good range and really good crush properties as well. But the combo that I do looks like this. Should mention first of all that this launcher is weird because it launches your opponent with their head towards you, as you can see right here, meaning that a lot of your stuff is just going to whiff. So you need to turn them around and flip them over to get a good combo, and the most common way of doing that is forward 4 for a spin move, and as you can see right here, that will spin them around into a normal spun state, allowing you to combo. So the combo that I will do off of this launcher most of the time looks like this. And so that gives you 62 damage. The ender right there I'm going to mention a little bit, but the combo is down back 1+2, forward 4 for the spin, forward 3, which is this great little jumping kick attack that Bob typically uses for refloats after a spin. It's the main application of it, but it's really good for that. Then I do a down forward 1 for another little refloat, and then I do 4-3 3+4, which is this string right here. This is a very important and interesting combo ender for Bob, and I'm going to explain why right now. It will always be completely guaranteed on the floor and reset the combo scaling in the same way that Excavator will for Giga. So this is a completely guaranteed ender, even though it doesn't look like it. So the combo damage here, as you can see, is like it's 51, and then you get the 11 on the ground with the 80% scaling for a total of 62. And that's completely true combo, and this combo ender works super consistently at the end of almost any combo, meaning that you can shore up your combo damage with a nice, like really healthy chunk of 11 at the end right there, which is really the key for why Bob is able to get good combo damage in the open. Without this, he would kind of struggle. But again, the combo is down back 1+2, forward 4 forward 3, down forward 1, 4-3, 4-3, 3+4, 4-3, 3+4, which is that ender right there, right? Okay. So that's my preferred option for this combo, and you can substitute your enders with Bob's combos with down 2-4, which is that move, when you want to convert them for wall carry. And the reason I'm talking so much about this first combo is I need to get a few of these key explanations out of the way, and then you're just going to remember that for the rest of the section. But in this example, I could do stuff like this, and after the down forward 1, just do down 2-4, and Bob will kick them towards the wall, and I can get a wall combo. The damage isn't huge, but down 2-4 is really his main option for creating wall carry, and he can can do that after any kind of spin like that, and it's going to work really well. He has a couple of other options, but let's talk about that in the wall section. But that's the main combo off of this launcher. There's one more way you can flip the opponent over and get really good damage off of this launcher, even better damage. It's a little bit fringe and a little bit sort of awkward to do, which is why I don't do it, but it's really a great option if you want to maximize. And it's using this down 2-4 early in the combo for the flip over, and it's going to look something like this. And as you can see right there, that gave me 55 plus 11 for the 66. So it is bigger, although this is something that you're going to have to practice. It's not super easy right off the bat. But the combo is down back 1 plus 2, down 2-4, back 2 for the refloat, this mid, right? After that, you're going to spin with down 3-4, which is one of your main spin moves with the character. And then you're going to have to run really deep and do the 4-3, 3 plus 4 for the ender. Or alternatively, you could, of course, go for another wall carry under here if you want to do that, which is going to be really great as well. So those are the two options. One that I think is ergonomic and easy to use, one that is a little bit awkward but gives you better damage. That's the weird case that is down back 1 plus 2. Now let's talk about some more orthodox sort of bread and butters, because you're going to use the same combos off of the next 3 launchers, and they are up for 3, which is your 20 frame hop kick, your while standing 2-1, which is your fastest launcher, and your while standing 14 frame block punisher, as well as your counter hit down for 2, which is your main counter hit launcher. So these 3, which are really like the 3 most important ones you have outside of this, are going to use the exact same combos. And the preferred option is going to look, let's use the hop kick for the example, and then just be aware that you can do the exact same thing for all of the launchers. It's going to look like this. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to explain it. So that's 71, which is really good off of a hop kick, but then again, the hop kick is 20 frames, so he should get good damage off of it. And it's the exact same thing off of the other launchers, like I say. And that one gives you 73, so it's even better. 73 damage off of your 14 frame launcher like that. It's very, very, very good. So definitely a great, great launcher for this character. So the combo I'm doing is I'm launching, and then I'm doing down 2-3, which is this weird move where he sort of spins around and knees them like that. And then I refloat with a down forward 1. I will then spin with down 3-4, and then I will run up and do my normal ender, which is 4-3, 3 plus 4. Or alternatively, I can of course do a wall carry ender if I prefer right there, if I want to look for a wall splat. And let's show the fact that it works off of this counter hit here as well. Really, really easy to learn and use. Maybe you have to practice the deep run for the ender, but it's not that difficult, and the damage is really good. One thing that needs to be mentioned about this combo, which is my preferred bread and butter off of all these launchers, is that if you're fighting against the smallest characters in the cast, your Elisas and so on, this down forward 1 right here for the refloat will whiff a lot of the time, and so to compensate for that, you will substitute it with a back 2. The back 2 will sacrifice just a tiny bit of damage, but it will become completely consistent on all the characters in the cast. And so I use the down forward 1 as long as I'm fighting like a male character, and then if I'm fighting somebody smaller, I will change it. But I know some people just always use the back 2 here just for consistency. It does have a lower hitbox and it is a more consistent move, but the down forward 1 works fine. It is slightly better for damage right there. So that's what I'm going to give you off of these combos. An easy improvised combo you can do off of any launcher, by the way, is just the combo that I gave you right here. This very simple one for the first launcher. It's not going to be great damage, but it's not going to be terrible either. And so if you just need to do something quick and fast and easy, this isn't going to let you down. And as you can see, it's like 66 off of the hop kick, so it's kind of fine. But there you go. You could alternatively spin with the back 4-4. And then just take out the down forward 1 right there, and you're going to get the 65. So that's just a quick little alternative. Maybe you have limited range towards the wall or something. Okay, so we've talked about your main launchers. Next, let's talk about down 3-4. This is going to be a launcher when the 4 hits by itself like that, or when it counter hits, the whole string becomes natural or natural counter hit string and launcher. And so what you need to do off of this move is you need to do another 3-4 right away, and then just the floaty 4-4-3 kick and the normal ender like that. And as you can see, this is massive damage. And you can also, if you want to, get in here with a wall carry ender instead, and you're going to get a nice 71, and you're going to be able to carry towards the wall. So even though this move is fringe and a little bit scrubby, like I mentioned in videos before, it is a decent panic move. Sometimes you have a hard read on something that you can counter hit, and when you do, I mean, the damage is really good, so it will see use on occasion, and it is very powerful when that happens. Alright, next let's talk about back 4-4, recent sort of addition and favorite move of mine. I think this move is really interesting but a little bit weird. It's backswing blowish. Bob kind of rotates in place and has weird evasive properties while crushing lows, but it actually has a lot longer range forward than Bob is like stationary. So if I'm right here, my foot is actually going to travel quite far forwards, have surprising amount of range, and catch a lot of people. So like a retreating defensive launcher, it's really quite good, and it's only -4 on block, which is really crazy good in my opinion, although the move is 26 frames to impact, so on the slow side. But this to like catch people who are trying to get off the ground with like low get up kicks and stuff is just a party. It's really funny, and it's a really good launcher. The easy thing to do here, and another easy thing that you can do off of all of your launchers with Bob, is just the back 2-2-4-4 string for the spin, and then run up and do 4-3 3+4 for your ender. And so in the case of this launcher, that's going to look like this. Okay, I was a little bit too shallow on the run up there, so let's do it again to show that it does work for 63. Another alternative that you can use here is the up forward 1+2 4 for your spin, but you're gonna have to set that up with a floaty jab. I'm gonna use a 2, so it's gonna look like this. And then you're going to have to run a little bit deeper still, and that's going to give you 64 right there, which is pretty cool. And those are 2 other generic options that you're going to be able to use in a lot of different Bob combos. Basically anything into 2 jab, which is slightly better damage than a 1 jab, which is why you use it, into up forward 1+2 4 for a spin, and then run up ender, whether you're using this or, you know, a wall carry ender. It's going to be really consistent off of a lot of stuff, but off of this launcher I tend to just use this because it's so easy. It's sort of what's seeped into my muscle memory, and the damage is fine. But you can do other stuff as well. You can spin with this if you prefer, and so on. But you're going to get somewhere in the region between 60 to 65 off of this launcher. Next, crouch dash 2. Is it time for crouch dash 2? Okay, so it's time to party. This is a crazy launcher, one of your highest damage ones, of course. What I like to do off of this is this unblockable. Let's do the combo first. And that's going to give me 83, which is really quite high for this launcher. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing the crouch dash 2, and then I'm doing back 2+3, which I'm buffering, by the way, to make it easier to get out, which is a spin move. And then I'm doing my other combo ender, which is just, you know, 4-4-3, down forward 1, 4-3-4, which works really well here. Another option that you can use here is, I usually sidestep a little bit to the right for consistency here, but you don't have to. But I'm going to show it with the sidestep. You can take it out and it's still going to work most of the time, but you can do this. That's going to give you the 80, and you can actually sidestep in between each of these crouch dash 1s like that if you want to, if you really want to realign with your target to make sure you're hitting him, you know, right in the crotch and sending him straight towards the wall. But you don't have to. It can be consistent even if you don't. But what I'm doing here is launching. I'm doing a crouch dash 1 for the spin, a crouch dash 1 for the damage filler, a back 2-2, and then down 2-3, and then back 3 for the final ender right there. And this is a generic ender that you will see a lot of people use with Bob. A combo that I don't use, that I haven't showed you yet, but let's just throw it in for good measure off of this launcher, is something like this. This is what you will see most people use off that launcher, but it's only 60 damage. I can get more. I can get properties I prefer that don't use this ender. But in the case of the Crouch Dash 2, I do use it. But you can do like whatever, honestly, with this. You see, they're gonna bounce like that, and you have time to do basically whatever you want right here. Like you can spin with this. You can like do this and then do stuff to them. You can like stay way out here and just hit them with the 3 and then do stuff to them and spin them. So I mean, the sky's the limit with this launcher, and it's one of those things where you can just spend a lot of time in practice mode fucking around and finding all the fun stuff. But I find just walking sideways to the right for a little bit and then doing a quick Crouch Dash 1 is almost never gonna let you down. Okay, counter hit Crouch Dash 1. Okay, is the next one on the list. So this is what I do here, and I get 71, which is pretty good. You can do like basically versions of stuff I have showed you already, but the Crouch Dash 1 into another Crouch Dash 1 is going to be the optimal sort of immediate combo filler right here. I messed it up that time, which is embarrassing, but like that, and then back to 2, down to 3, kind of like that is a very good go-to option. This Crouch Dash 1 is a great combo filler because it does 25 damage, it floats them pretty high, it's fast, you know, it's got range. Next, counter hit standing 4. This is a fun one. Counter hit standing 4, what I usually do is just this for the spin, because that's really easy to counter hit confirm. It's very consistent and it's going to work really quite well, and then you can just do your normal ender like that, and you're going to get your 63, which is good off of a fast counter hit like this. Although you can get more damage here if you start doing weird stuff, such as, and then you have to run really deep, but you can get that for 68, which is really high. So what I did right there is I counter hit them with the 4, right? Then I do up forward 1+2, and then I roll into Meatball 1, and then I can refloat and spin, and I can do whatever for the ender. Running really deep right there for the 4-3, 3+4 ender can be difficult, but it is another option that you have, and it is going to carry them quite a bit further towards the wall when you're looking to do long wall carry combos. But this isn't going to let you down. It works really well just like this. You can do the up for 1+2 really quite late, and it's going to work just fine. And it's the same thing, of course, when you're hitting them with a 1-4, like that, and it's still going to work. You see, from a really far out range, it's consistent, it's powerful, it's really lovely, and you can do stuff like this after the spin. He has those gimmicks out of his key charge, can be annoying. And then do like a wall carry ender again, like down to 4. Okay, next I've got ball 4. Okay, so we're getting weird now. Ball 4, basically what you want to do most of the time off of ball 4 is while standing 2-1, and because you're already recovering in while standing, you just press 2-1. And then you do up forward 1+2, 4 for a spin, and then you can end in a multitude of different ways. But this is like the main combo. Then if you just want a damage ender, you can do that, and you're going to get 50. You can, sorry, we don't need counter hit anymore. You can do this for 50, which is the 1+2, 1+2. But you can see you really need to run really quite deep for that to hit. It's not super consistent. But there you go, you can get 50. But an option that I really like here is to try and cheese the opponent a little bit and get resets, which you can do. Again, we don't need counter hit. Like this. And I just do 1+2 by itself, hold forward, and that allows me to transition into Meatball. And if they stand up straight, I just get another free Meatball 4, and I can like you know, really cheese them with these tactics. Or you could alternatively, if you just want to, you know, end the sequence and get some damage, do 1+2, roll forward into Meatball, and just collect Meatball 1 for a nice chunk of damage there at the end. So that's probably going to be my recommended option. If you're just trying to do a damage combo here, do this. Do the 1+2, roll into Meatball, and do Meatball 1 right there, and you get a decent chunk of, what's that, 44 plus 13, which I think is 57, so it's basically full combo damage. It's quite respectable, and you're never going to get like really huge damage off of this launcher unless you're ending with Rage Drive or something like that. Alright, what else do we need to talk about? Well, there's one more launcher that we haven't mentioned. It's a really fringe one, but it works for Oki in my opinion, and I really quite like it. And it's up forward 3+4 on counter hit. This can work when people are trying to get off the ground. You're going to crush get up kicks. Sometimes you'll get counter hits, sometimes you'll hit him on the ground, but it has a unique way you need to combo off of it in, so we need to show that so that you know how to do it. You can do two things. You can do a while standing 4 and then float them and do whatever, or you can do a while standing 2-1 like this and then spin with upward 1+2 4 like that. And those are the two options you have. And then, you know, whatever combo ender I've shown you so far is going to work just fine here, but stuff like this, and you can see the damage is really quite high. So I think this is a decent move, good range, it's respectable enough, but you need the counter hit to make it launch. I think I've talked about all of Bob's main launchers. I hope I haven't left anything out. Well, we need to mention that, of course, the back 3 is guaranteed in this situation. It's guaranteed off of the lariat near the wall, but so is the down 3+4. Oh, and there's one launcher we haven't mentioned, which is the 4-forward 1+2 throw. This you can do a couple of different things off of this, but it's going to throw them in the air and allow you to combo. You can do rage drives after it for good damage. The easiest thing I'm going to recommend is just to do this. And you can see that actually does whiff sometimes, and what you need to do to make it not do that is be really deep with your crouch dash 1 right there, and then it's going to hit and you get 48, which I think is just a nice little combo there. It's almost 50, it's decent enough. You can convert it for wall carry if you want to. The sort of easy version, if you want to not have to do crouch dashes in your combo here, and you want to do a less advanced version, you can just do this. Oh, sorry, that's not it anymore, sorry. And you get 44, and that's just the throw, spin with forward 4, forward 3, and then I do a down back 2, which is a move we haven't talked about yet. We will talk about it in the wall section, but it's a good little refloat for good damage. And then you can do this generic ender right there, or you can do, you know, my favorite ender, the 4-3-3+4 right here, and that's going to give you 46. And then the advanced option here, which is, it's not really hard, it's just like you need to get into the right rhythm of getting it out, but you can do this, which is like you need to do 2 very fast crouch dash ones in the combo, but if you manage to do that and you practice it a little bit, you can get 51 right there, which is really quite good, and it's optimal as far as I know. So that's what I try to do when I really want to get good damage off of that, but it's up to you. But a good sort of middle ground that uses both is like spin with this and then just do 1 crouch dash 1 and then, you know, fill on top of that. So I think that's going to do it for combos. I know it was long and all over the place, but I've been told in the comments of my videos that my Bob combos are very unorthodox. I do combos that most people don't tend to use with the character, but I like the properties. The damage is very, very high. I get good wall carry, so I want to sort of give you a lot of different elements and tools that you can use to develop your own sort of ways of comboing with the character. But now you have a toolkit as well as my recommendations to create some cool combos. Next, we're going to talk about some Oki and some walls, and then we're going to start wrapping this tutorial up. Thank you so much for watching this far. I'll see you on the next stage. Alright, so in this section I want to talk about some Bob wall combos. Now your most bread and butter sort of simple thing that you're doing at the wall after a generic wall splat is going to look like this. And it's just back 2-2, down 3+4. It's very easy to do. It's not very high damage, but it isn't going to let you down. It's consistent. It's easy enough to perform. Now if you're getting a really high wall splat, so if we go back to the middle of the screen right here, and I launch my opponent from out here, and I'm putting them on the wall with something like this. This is another option that you have here, which is going to do really high damage, but it requires a sort of high wall split, and it's up forward 2-3-3+4 into down 3+4. That's also what you're going to use after you break the floor at the wall on the floor break stage. You're going to splat them back to the wall with a standing 4 and then do this, and that's one of the few options, if not the only option Bob has for good damage after floor breaks. which is unfortunate. But another thing that you can do when you're splatting your opponent really close is you can extend the damage of your normal bread and butter wall combo, so this, by re-wall splatting with a down back 2, which works really consistently. So off of your best wall splatting options from this range, which are your headbutt extensions and your power crush, you can just backdash one time and then do down back 2 and then your normal wall combo, and you're gonna re-wall splat for extra damage. And you can see it works off of the headbutt, and it works off of the headbutt 4 just as well. Really consistent, really easy to do for like extra damage in your wall combos. But when you are splatting this close with these options with Bob, something that you can do that is usually even more powerful is sidestep into some sort of spin move to try and get extended combos using multiple wall splats, or even comboing them back into the open. Now my favorite options for this is the back 2-2-4-4, because it's very floaty and easy to use. So for example, something like splatting with the power crush maybe, and you can see I just put Paul back on the wall and then I do my wall combo for even more damage. And if you sidestep even further, you can send them diagonally to another wall, and you can walk all the way around them and combo them out into the open. And if you manage to do that and still get a spin, which can be a little bit challenging, but something like this, 4-3-3+4 for just your generic ender right there is going to give you good damage, but you do lose out on your wall positioning. However, this is difficult enough to do consistently that if you're going to attempt these combos, a lot of the time you're just going to start walking sideways and start spinning to see sort of where your opponent's going to land. And if you get an opportunity like this, like great, you do a high damage combo. If you overextend and send them back into the open, maybe spin with something safe like down 3-4 and do your 4-3-3+4 ender. But I think a lot of the time these are really good options for Bob, because yes, this normal stuff isn't all that impressive for damage, but he can do all kinds of like crazy creative stuff using the wall. So now that we've mentioned that, let's go back to the middle of the stage and talk a little bit about General Bob Oki. The lariat is great for people who are trying to get off the ground. It's safe. It's going to beat a lot of options, but let's first of all give you some options for hitting grounded opponents. And your main option for this is the back 3. This is consistently going to hit people who are staying on the ground. You can see, you know, the way you get it guaranteed off of this 4-4 here. And so if they are on the ground and they refuse to get up, this is basically your version of a stomp with Bob, or maybe your version of a steel pedal, let's say. So it's really, really good for that. Minus 15 on block though, so you don't want to use this if your opponent's going to get up and have time to block it. If it does get a counter hit, however, you do launch your opponent with this, which is pretty cool. So I think it's a cool move. But that's like your main ground hitting mid that is also going to knock them down if they get up crouching, which means that it's very good at the wall because, you know, hit them grounded, or if they get up crouching, you know, get a wall splat. So it's very similar to like a down 3+4 from Miguel or Josie, you know, that kind of a move. The other options that you have is down 3+4, only -4. Which I think is, I'm lying to you. Up 3+4 is what I'm talking about, this move. Up 3+4 is this somersault motion. It's going to hit people on the ground, which is really cool. It's only -4 on block and +2 on hit. And if you do get a counter hit because your opponent's trying to get up off the ground with you know, get up kicks or whatever, you're going to counter hit them for a full combo, which is really cool. It's got low crush, so it's going to go over low get up kick. So this is another really good option for chasing people on the ground that I'm trying to apply more lately, and it's a lot safer than the back 3, to be honest, even though it won't give you a knockdown or anything like that. So my two favorite options for hitting grounded opponents, up 3+4 and back 3. You can use down 1, which is a -11 mid. It's not all that impressive. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage, but it's fast and reliable. And then another cool move that I found recently is forward 3+4, which is this weird sort of Chloe-esque kick that you have. It's -7 on block, meaning it's completely safe if your opponent gets up standing. If they get up crouching, you knock them down. It's going to hit them on the ground, but not for a lot of damage at all. It's like a partial hit. Let's actually Just see if we can put the opponent on the ground when we're doing this. It's probably easier to see, kind of like that. So it's not a full hit, you only get the partial hit for 9 damage, but it will cover that option. But if you do get a hit with this, the back 3 on the floor is guaranteed for 44, which I think is pretty cool. So it's another option to consider. It's kind of like my substitute because I don't get to do you know, Miguel's fantastic version of this move, you know, his plus frame savage transition. But it's a decent move, but for the most part I think this is actually really, really good, so I might suggest that, even though it does feel very linear. Okay, if we're going to talk about like general wall game in terms of splatting, we've mentioned all of this before, but your headbutt extensions, your lariat, your sidestep lariat, and your power crush are all amazing. The normal lariat and sidestep lariat are safe, which is completely amazing. Is there anything else we need to mention here? Well, you have this throw, which is going to give you a wall combo, which can be good and really can stress your opponent out. It's basically slide input 1+2, so slide input for characters like, you know, Lee and Shaheen. Crouch down forward, down forward 1+2 for the throw to come out. So it's a weird like fringe little throw from Crouch, but it's weirdly useful. You need to be very close to the wall for the wall splat to happen, but it does work, and I think it's an interesting and sort of technical option that is worth mentioning for Bob. So I'm going to throw it in here. Anything else we need to mention for... Okay, let's just mention how to generally break the floor with Bob if you're gonna have to do that. Another option that you have for just a quick wall combo with Bob in this season is down for 3-1-1 like this. You can see that the damage isn't very impressive, but it is gonna spike the opponent down, which is pretty cool. And this will break the floor, so it's a fast, good, you know, wall ender if you're trying to break floors, which I think is pretty cool, so it's worth mentioning. And then you have these extensions, which I think are pretty cool at the wall as well. From full crouch, you can do full crouch down 4-2, which is this move, recovers in standing. And then you have a couple of extensions. You have down 4-2, 4-1+2. This becomes natural on counter hit, meaning that you can, on the 4 that is, meaning that you can wall splat your opponent with that for damage. So it's an Oki option at the wall. You know, you knock them down, and then you start crouching to stress them out, and then you hit them with this. If you counter hit a get up kick, then you get a re-wall splat. And then the other extension that you have is down forward 2, sorry, 2-1-1+2. So you have 2-1-1+2 and down forward 2-4-1+2. And they're pretty similar in terms of their frame data, the difference being that the 4 extension right there is going to catch people who are staying on the ground, which is whereas the 1 extension won't, but they will both end in this wall splatting mid. There's -13 in both cases, so no matter which one of these strings you do, the -13 mid there at the end is going to get punished a lot of the time, but it can be worth gambling on, especially if you think your opponent's going to get up with get up kicks, because if you counter hit those with this string, it just resets them into a completely new combo, which is pretty cool. So it's another unique, funny little option that you have for Bob when it comes to the ground. And of course, just hell sweeps for Oki. When people are just gonna get up standing, knock them back down, you know, mess them up, is obviously a great option most of the time. But lariats are never gonna let you down either. Forward 4, by the way, which we know gives you back 3 guaranteed in almost any scenario, actually also gives you the down 3+4 at the wall for a mini combo, which I think is pretty cool. So that's worth mentioning. Crouch dash 1+2 is an amazing wall bounce move if we're going to mention wall bounce. Let's actually give you the combo off of that. That's important. So back 4-4 into your generic wall combo works really well if you do it really fast, which I think is cool. And that's just going to be my recommended option. The other wall bounce move that you have, because you do have 2 with Bob, is up forward 1+2 1. Really weird move. I guess the reason you might use it is for its low crush properties right here. So it's, yeah, I think it's really fringe, but you can do the same wall bounce combo that you would off of the other option. I think I tested this. Yeah. It's awkward, I almost never use it, but it is there, and I think like the day you actually jump over a low get up kick with this and wall bounce them with this and then maybe spin them to the wall and then maybe rage drive on the wall for the kill, it's going to be the coolest thing ever, and you're going to be in like every highlight reel on the internet. But I think it's fringe, whereas this wall bounce move is absolutely fantastic and comes highly recommended by me. I think that's going to wrap up this section. We're going to do one final cut and then some conclusions in a final section. But thank you so much for watching this far. I'm starting to lose my voice, but I'm going to soldier through to the end. Hopefully you will as well. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Welcome to the final section of my tutorial on Bob, which is going to be my wrap-up and my conclusions about the character. I've really enjoyed making this and I hope you learned something. I really do suggest that you try and pick this character up because he is so enjoyable. But to give you my conclusions on the playstyle and what we've talked about in this video. Bob is an unorthodox and slightly weird character who has very slow launchers overall, and so to compensate for that, you're going to want to play him at his optimal range, which is going to be around here. Your whiff punisher that's going to be a stand-in for a standard launcher is going to be the extensions off of your headbutt, which is upward 1+2, 1+2, or upward 1+2, 4. This is also going to be your main options for wall splatting the opponent from a range, and Bob is very good at wall splatting his opponent, especially from a range. He can do all kinds of creative and high damage things with the wall, and so if you do have the option, I do suggest that you go to a wall stage. You have a Mishima style crouch dash with a very powerful low and a couple of powerful mids for the mix-up. One of them is one of the few truly powerful wall bounce moves in the game, which is fun and unique and interesting, but that's also something that is just going to really make you dangerous from your optimal range, which is just about here at range 2. You do have some really powerful block punishment and fast close-up tools though. Your jabs are long range and your standard just normal block punishment gives you really good damage. However, you get your first standard launcher at 18, which is very slow for standing, and so that is something that you're going to have to learn to work around. But you can usually tear really large chunks out of your opponent with stuff like forward 2-3 for a 12 frame, very fast, very powerful punisher. And if you can get 16 on block or on whiff, of course, the headbutt extensions are absolutely amazing. You have a throw that will turn into a small combo when you need it, and this can give you wall combos if you can carry to the wall, which is cool as well. We've shown you many different ways of comboing with the character. While his combos are unorthodox, you can really get creative with them, and if you're willing to do that, you're going to see some serious damage and some very powerful properties come out, which I think is really cool. Is there anything else we need to talk about in the wrap-up here? Well, learn how to utilize your back 2-2 string. The first hit by itself is a great mid-poke. The second hit is a natural extension for damage, which is very good in terms of its frame data, but duckable, which is why you will throw out the 4 on occasion as a safety hit, but be aware that even when you do that, you can get ducked and launch punished for using this. So you have to be careful when you're fighting good opponents and mix in other mids, and just use the back 2 by itself to keep your opponent crispy. You do struggle for really fast and powerful low pokes, but the down back 3 is your best option in my opinion. You're going to get decent damage and very good properties. You can obviously go balls to the wall with launch punishable but powerful lows like the hell sweep, like the down back 3+4. To name a couple. But even though you do struggle for lows, even though you do struggle for fast launchers, I think there are enough really powerful and interesting aspects to this character to make him a solid mid-tier character and one of the most fun characters in the game to play. So I absolutely do recommend him to everybody, and I'm going to keep on playing him as one of my mains and cultivating my Bob. I will share my knowledge with you guys as my own Bob develops. But if you have watched this whole thing, I just just need to express a whole lot of gratitude here at the end. As usual, I start losing my voice and my mind by the end of it, because even though the video might only be 1 or 2 hours long, I'm usually recording for something like 5 or 6. But I think I got all the really important information I wanted to get in here about the character, and I'm so happy that I finally got this made and got it out there. So thank you so much for always supporting the channel. Much more stuff coming in the future. Right now I'm thinking about doing some tutorial content for Elisa, who I might be picking back up in this season, even though they nerfed her into oblivion and made her, in my opinion, quite possibly the worst character in the game right now, but she's just so cool and fun to play that I might have to use her. Anyway, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoy having you come to my channel. Let's talk again very soon. Bye bye for now.